Today we're actually in a new location over in downtown Miami. This is a park called Maurice Ferré Park. I have no idea if I said that right. Sounds French, whatever. And behind me over here is what used to be formerly the FTX Arena. What it's going to be now, I don't know, guys. We'll find out, but probably not going to be FTX Arena any longer. We're going to take a walk along the water here, talk about real estate and the economy. Now, starting off with real estate, one thing that a lot of people are asking themselves these days is, how much home equity do I have and how much of it can I borrow? And the reason for that is because life costs more than ever now, and coincidentally, that's happening at a time in history when people have the most home equity ever. Well, maybe if you don't count last year in 2022, because obviously prices have been coming down. And for those of you who don't know what home equity is, all it is the difference between what your house is worth and what you owe. So a very simple example would be if you have a house that's worth $300,000 and you owe $200,000 on it, then you have $100,000 in home equity. Not that hard, right? And a lot of people end up borrowing against this equity in order to pay for bills, in order to fund vacations, in order to pay off other debts, in order to remodel their houses. There's a lot of different reasons people will tap into their home equity. Sometimes they're good reasons, sometimes they're very bad reasons. And basically how this goes is, say you want to tap into this home equity and you have $100,000 in home equity. Most lenders who are going to give you either a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit, they are going to let you borrow at maximum 80%. So if you have the $100,000 in home equity, then the most they'll let you borrow is 80 grand. And that's not a guarantee, that's the maximum. They might not let you borrow that because they'll look at things like your credit, and they're also going to look at your debt to income ratio. And if it looks like you're already struggling financially and you have a bunch of credit card debt built up, things like that, the odds of them letting you take your full 80% equity out are slim to none. Probably going to be more like maybe 30, 40, 50%. Now, if you've seen my videos in my channel before, you know I'm pretty much against people doing this unless you're going to use the money to maybe buy an investment property that's going to cash flow. Unless you're going to do something with the money that will end up making you money, I say there's really never a good time to tap your home equity. At least that's my personal opinion. You can think and feel however you want about it. But there are consequences to this, guys, and things that people don't think about that I want to bring up here. And those things are, first of all, when you take out one of these loans, you usually have to pay closing costs and other fees. So it's not like it's free to take a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit. They're going to ding you right up front with some kind of costs as like a loan origination, okay? And then say you use the money for just, buying a new car, then the interest that you pay on these loans is not tax deductible, versus if you use the money for like a home renovation, then you could potentially deduct the interest on this home equity loan in order to save you a little bit of money in taxes. But really the most dangerous part about doing this, especially at a time right now when home prices are going down almost everywhere, is you could end up owing more than your house is worth as the value of your home comes down. So say, let's go back to that initial example of the $300,000 home, you have $100,000 in equity, right? So let's say you borrow the max, you take the 80 grand. Well, now you only have $20,000 in equity in your home. So let's say the market drops by 10%, which is a very mild drop considering how much other places have already dropped, like San Francisco and Austin and places like this that have already seen more than double-digit declines. We're talking in the magnitude of 15 to 18% already, guys. If you have a house that's worth 300 grand and it drops in value 10%, now it's only worth 270,000, right? Follow me so far? Well, you originally only had 20,000 in equity ever since you took this loan. So now you're upside down, and now you're officially underwater on your house. And that's basically every homeowner's worst nightmare. This is where you don't want to be, because that means if you were to sell your house for the 270 that it's worth, you would owe money at the closing. And that is not where you want to be when it comes to real estate transactions, because not only are you $10,000 underwater on your property, but there's also going to be closing costs, there's going to be realtor fees, there are taxes and things like this that you have to pay when you close on the property. So on a transaction like that, you could be looking at coming at least $30,000 or more out of pocket if you were to sell the house in that underwater scenario. And that's just one thing that can happen to you in today's environment, and why taking these loans right now are so risky. The other big one that can happen to people is you can just flat out have some kind of emergency or default, and you're not able to pay the loan for whatever reason. And when that happens, these home equity loans or the helocs can actually come after you and foreclose on your house. So that's basically worst case scenario, going into foreclosure over this. You know, it starts off as something simple like, hey, I just want to pay off some debt, or let's remodel the kitchen, honey. And then next thing you know, wham, layoff. You know, we're in this recession, I can't pay this loan anymore. And then 6 months later, you're facing a foreclosure. So this is the last thing you really want to happen to you. And unfortunately, guys, this is going to happen to more and more people, I think, as we move into 2023, that end up doing this and are operating on thin margins like that. You know, it sounds like you're rich, sounds like, you know, I have this $100,000 in equity, that's great, but you can easily see how fast this scenario can go sour for you, and it doesn't end well if you can't make the payments. And one of the reasons I think this is going to be a big problem people are going to be facing into 2023 and even into next year in 2024 is because a lot of people still have equity, and they're going to be looking at using this as a source of ways to fund different things in life, like people always do, unfortunately. And to make matters worse, the national savings, which is the amount that people save every month, has literally dropped $100 billion in 1 month. So people are losing their savings left and right now. And funny enough, when you go back to April of 2020, right after all the lockdowns started, the personal savings rate spiked to 33.8%, which is the highest it's ever been since January of 1959, okay? But then, once November of 2022 came around, which was just a few months ago, that all started to turn around. Now the average worker is only able to save about 2.4% of their disposable income every month. And that's assuming you even have any disposable income. You're lucky right now to even have disposable income, but if you do, most people are only saving that, 2.4%. That's it, guys. And this is what you're left with trying to save for a vacation or the down payment on a house or whatever it is you're trying to save for. That's what you're left with right now. That's one of the main reasons I think you're going to see more and more people turn to these home equity loans and home equity lines of credit, because besides people's 401ks or their brokerage accounts, this is where the majority of everyone's wealth is right now, and that's also assuming you're a homeowner. You know, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're a renter, you know, you don't have access to any of this, and you're probably one of the people then that are maxing out the credit cards just to stay afloat right now. Now, one thing a lot of you have been asking me about is what's going to happen in Florida with the situation here, because housing has gotten so expensive here, and you know, obviously Florida is not in favor of rent control basically anywhere, and I know a lot of you out there think that that's going to be the answer to having more affordable housing, different things like that. And there's a new bill being proposed right now in the Florida legislature, and this bill has a ton of things in it. And it's so much I would have to make an entire video about it, but I'm going to give you guys some highlights and some bullet points of what's being proposed with this to try and give people a break and try to make housing here in Florida more affordable. And you know, you guys can let me know if you think any of this is good or if it's going to work. Now, a lot of it comes down to increasing the budget for already existing programs like first-time home buyer programs and having more money allocated to rental assistance for people that need help with things like that. They're also looking at giving people more money for renovating older properties, especially mixed-use commercial and residential properties that are going to be deemed for affordable housing. That's going to be highly incentivized in this bill, and as well as increasing tax credits for low-income people. So that's like one way they're kind of handling it when it comes to making sure the money that they have available for these programs is getting into the hands of the people who need it the most. That's the first thing they're trying to do with this. And another segment of it that's kind of a new part of this bill, give more incentives for home builders here in Florida. They want to do things like exempt property tax for landlords who rent to verified low-income families. And we're talking families that make $39,000 a year or less. So the income thresholds are very low for a family of 4. They would also do property tax exemptions for people who rented to people who make a little bit more but are still struggling. So say maybe you have a family of 4 that makes $50,000 and they would still get a tax credit, but maybe only 75% of the property tax would be waived instead of 100%, and so on and so forth. So they're looking at actually completely exempting property taxes from landlords that rent to low-income families. They're also looking at giving property tax exemptions for brand new developments that cater towards low-income housing. They also want to encourage development in areas like this that are very urban, a city where people can actually afford to live and work in that area. And the type of incentives they're giving for things like this is cutting out all the zoning red tape for mixed-use residential and commercial buildings in urban areas, like you can think of a big city like Miami like this, that cater to, renting to people who make like $94,000 a year or less for a family of 4, which sounds like a lot, but when you live in an expensive city like Miami, obviously that money doesn't go very far. And the whole idea with this is to allow people to be able to live and work in the same area instead of somebody working in Miami, for example, and having to commute all the way from Homestead every day in order to get to work. And this way, somebody like that could afford to live and work here and not have to commute. They also want to do things like looking at every single county's permitting process and try to expedite that, because all the permitting processes here are a joke and it takes forever to get any kind of permit for remodels and new builds and things like this. So looking at streamlining that. They want to also encourage the use of public property for affordable housing. So a lot of local governments own different property around the state of Florida, and they're going to be looking at all of those parcels that local governments own to see, can something be built here that can help out with the affordable housing crisis. And one big one that's in this bill as well, guys, is that just goes to show you how anti-rent control Florida is, that also in this bill they're looking at completely banning any local government's ability to implement any sort of rent control. So that's what they don't want any local governments doing at all costs. So really, when you look at the big picture of all of this, Florida's approach is we're not going to do rent control, but let's not only make sure we're allocating the money towards the people that need it the most, but also let's put more money into this fund and give developers incentives for building in areas where we need it the most, especially in these densely populated areas where, oh, well, the zoning doesn't work for that. You're only supposed to build, a 3-story, retail development there. So they're going to be looking at cutting things like that out to basically create more opportunities for people to live somewhere. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about all this. I haven't had a lot of time to digest this or think about it, but I definitely think that, putting the money where it's needed the most definitely is a good thought, but if it actually works in real life and how well it's implemented is ultimately going to determine if this is actually going to work or not. So that's my biggest concern. Like, you can say all day long that all this money is going to go towards the affordable housing developments, and that more people are going to get first-time home buyer down payment assistance and rental assistance and all of that. But that doesn't work if people don't have any way to access it, you know, because everything's like understaffed nowadays. You try to call anywhere, can't get anybody on the phone. You hear that? It's one of the ships. That thing is loud. It's like echoing all the way from over there through like these buildings. It's like a reverberation, no joke. Crazy. So it comes down to how well is all this going to be implemented, right? How fast can they actually get the money into people's hands who need it? That's a big one if you ask me. And the second thing is, are people even going to be aware of this, right? Like for example, I've been a resident of Miami Beach for like 15 years, and only like maybe 6 years ago or so that I become aware that there were state funds available for the first-time home buyer down payment assistance program. But like I said, it comes with some caveats in the sense that, you know, it's basically a 15-year loan that's forgiven if you keep the property that long. But if you don't, and you sell it prematurely, or you decide to rent it and not live there anymore, then you're on the hook for paying this back. So on the one hand, it's nice that stuff like that's available, but who can predict the next 15 years of their life? I mean, I know I can't. I don't know anybody who actually can. And I feel like taking on extra money like that and taking that sort of risk is just too risky. And I decided to not even go for anything like that because I just don't want to be on the hook. I can't guarantee I'm going to live in my place for 15 years. So I decided not to even do it. Not only that, but the amount of red tape and the forms and the hoops you have to jump through to try to get the money is kind of insane, guys. So if they really want stuff like this to work, if you ask me, everything needs to be streamlined. Like for example, the reason I'm even in downtown Miami today is because I'm trying to register my car, because now I just got the title from the bank, and so I'm trying to register it under my name. But guess what? You have to come down here in person and do it. Not only that, the place is not even open today. No one answers the phone. You can't get anyone on the phone for just something as simple as registering the car, guys. So I had to sit like 40 minutes in traffic just to come here. Was not able to get it done, so I'm gonna have to come back another day next week at some point and do this all over again. And you know, something as simple as registering the car is a hassle. So if that can't be done easily, I just don't see how they're going to be implementing all these affordable housing measures so quickly and making it so that people can get access to all this money quickly and helping people get into homes sooner than later. So I don't know, we'll see. But we definitely need some of these things, because check this out, guys. In 2022, we had 583,200 people trade in their driver's license and get a brand new Florida one. Welcome to Florida. You're a new resident here, okay? Which is a lot. That's 28% higher than the average of the previous 6 years, and 36,200 more than the pandemic triggered migration of 2021. So we actually had more people move here in Florida last year in 2022 than we even had at the height of the pandemic, which is insane if you think about it. So it makes sense that they're looking at different ways to figure out the housing affordability problem here before it gets completely out of control and we end up like California. And this is why I was saying the other day that I feel like Miami's housing market is going to remain relatively flat for a little while, because check this out. The top 6 Florida counties that received the most new residents last year were, ready for the first one? Miami-Dade County. Just us alone, we got 59,000 new people, guys. And Broward County, right behind us at 40,000. Hillsborough County at 38,000. Palm Beach County at 37,000. Orange County at 37,000, and Lee County at 30,000. Those are the top counties that got the most new people out of this 583,000 people. So it's a lot. So Florida's definitely in this situation where we need to do something about this soon before we end up like California. Because you guys probably already saw, you know, in this park, there's some homeless people here, but it's nothing like California. You have a few people here and there, and it's something that I've always seen since I moved to Miami. So the situation isn't completely out of control like over there, but it could end up that way if they don't get in front of this. So it looks like they're looking at getting in front of it, but I'm always skeptical with government and how well all this is going to be implemented, and making sure the funds are not going to be squandered and that all the money ends up in the right places fast enough. That's really the government's biggest problem, right? Everything is so slow and so drawn out and so inefficient. And that's my biggest concern. And you know, to kind of back up what I was telling you guys in my Miami video when it comes to the housing prices here and things like that, check out where all these people are coming from. Here's the most interesting part of this. The number one place where most of the new residents came from, over 115,000 guys, foreign country. So we actually had the foreign countries being the number one new type of resident here in Florida. And right behind them is New York at 61,000 people. Then you have New Jersey at 30,000, California at 28,000, Pennsylvania at 24,000 people, Illinois at 24,000 people, Georgia 23,000, Texas 20,000, Ohio 18,000, Massachusetts 17,000. So those are all the states where people are moving from the most and coming here to Florida. And it's really no surprise that the states that charge the most in state income taxes are seeing the most people leave right now. You have California, Hawaii, New York, and Oregon. All these places have double-digit income taxes for people that live there, and those places are seeing the most people leave, and they're coming to places like Texas and Florida and Wyoming and South Dakota and Tennessee and Nevada, places that just don't have state income taxes because people are just tired of it. They're tired of getting taxed to oblivion and then living in a hellhole. People are just sick of it. The biggest thing that I'm concerned about, and other Florida residents, and I see you guys talking about this in the comments, is making sure that we don't become that next hellhole because of all the new people we're receiving. So I just hope all this is going to work out for the best. Now, I saw a really interesting real estate story today that I wanted to share with you guys real quick, because this actually relates to me personally, and it's something that I actually did. So there's this new trend and new belief among especially young people that are looking at doing things like renting where they live and then buying investment properties in other areas that are maybe more affordable or in places where they can get cash flow from it. So basically what this allows them to do is to start taking advantage of real estate when it comes to the tax benefits and getting their foot in the door when it comes to the real estate game, but renting in areas that they still can't afford to buy in yet. And that was actually exactly what I did here in Miami, which is why I find this fascinating. And a lot of people thought it was stupid and, well, that's not the way it goes. You're supposed to buy your primary residence first and then you look at buying an investment property. But the reality is, guys, renting here for like the first 13 years of living here actually saved me so much money, guys, because I could not afford to buy something. First of all, you need to have the income, you need to have a huge down payment, like you guys know if you've been watching my channel. So it's not that easy to just go and buy something, first of all. And second of all, the rent for a long time was far cheaper than owning. Like, for example, I always use the same example of the last place I lived in. Rent in our place cost about $2,100 a month, okay? And to own that same apartment would have costed about $4,000 a month, so roughly double. And people are going to say, oh, you're not going to get the tax benefits and the appreciation and all of that. Maybe not. But one thing I did get is being able to save a ton of money to be able to buy my own place. And that's exactly what I did. But before I did that, I actually was able to save enough money to buy an investment property first. So I was actually one of these people that they're talking about who didn't actually buy my primary residence first. I was a renter and became a landlord before I actually ever had my own primary residence. So sounds backwards, but I think for the right people, this is a good strategy to get into real estate. So might be something that you want to consider if you're a younger person in that same situation, because maybe if you got $30,000 for a down payment on the property, it's not enough for a property where you'd want to live, but maybe it's enough to buy an investment property somewhere and you can still pay rent in a more affordable area. So just think about all these different options. There's always ways to do things in life. There's always ways to get ahead, and that's what I want everybody on my channel to be aware of with this. So really the idea here is when there's a will, there's a way. That's always been the situation for me, and I think that can be the situation for a lot of you as well, especially if you've been patient, waiting for the right opportunity to come along in real estate, and you guys are starting to see right now before your eyes that things are starting to shift more in the favor of buyers. So I'm very optimistic of where the next couple of years are going to go for people who have been patient, who've been saving and getting out of debt. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. If you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.